Hello there. This is MD. Here with you on SaskiYano. Here we go again. We are in a new After Effects tutorial. In this tutorial, you are going to learn about layer properties. If you want to follow along with this layer properties tutorial, open up the layer properties EP file, and you will have a very similar composition to this. That will open up. If you haven't done that yet, no problem. You can just drag any footage finally may have on your computer into your project, and then pull down into your composition and put it in the bottom of the layer stack here, and you should be able to follow along just fine. So in this composition, I have 5 different layers with different types of layers, so I can show you that there are some layers that have unique layer properties associated with them. Then you can see what properties are on any layer by twirling down this little triangle here. So you can see for this footage layer here, the only thing that I have available is the transform properties, which are anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. Some of those are pretty obvious, like scale, rotation, opacity, and position. I'm just gonna reset all of those. By the way, you can reset all of the transform properties at once by clicking this reset button right here. So if I just adjust all of these, I want them to go back to how they are by default. Just that one button right there, which is also available. If you right-click the layer, come up to transform, and then reset. So most of these transform layer properties are pretty self-explanatory. The only one that I think is a little bit confusing is the anchor point. I'm gonna solo up this layer right here, so we can take a better look at that. If you adjust the anchor point, watch what happens. Now this may be different than what you thought would happen. What's happening is the anchor point, which is right here, is not actually moving. The contents of the layer are moving relative to the anchor point. If you want to move the anchor point, you actually need to adjust the position. But that adjusts everything, both the anchor point and the position. You can see they are moving together. Let me show you another way. If you grab the anchor point tool and you make an adjustment to where this anchor point is, you'll notice down here under the transform properties that both the anchor point and the position are being adjusted at the same time. And so, if I want to move the anchor point up here, you notice that both of these got adjusted the position of the layer and the anchor point, which essentially does exactly what you would want to do. It moves the anchor point, but the layer doesn't actually move. So if you ever want to go in here and you want to make a very precise adjustment to the anchor point, all you need to remember is you also have to adjust the position as well. If you don't want your layer to be moved, that'll make more sense if you explore on your own and you play around with it a little bit. For example, if I reset this and I want to set the anchor point right here, right on the very edge, what I would want to do if I was going to use the pan behind or anchor point tool is that what's at the X coordinate for the anchor point to 0. And then I would set the position to 0, because I know that how After Effects determines the coordinates. And you can see that for yourself by opening up the info panel here. If you hover around, you'll see there's an X in and Y0 is located right up here. So 0 in the Y and 0 in the X right here on the top left corner. And so In order to get the anchor point smack dab on the edge of this layer, you set the X to 0 for the anchor point, and you set the position to 0 for the X value right here. If you want to put it up in this top corner, you set both the anchor point to 0 and the Y and the position to 0 in the Y. And now the anchor point is located in the top corner. Alright. Let's look at some other layer properties. This next layer here is a solid. And by default, if you just pull solid down into your composition and you look at what is available in the layer properties, it's basically just the transform properties. The same as a footage layer. That is until you add things like masks and effects. Then you have some other options. Because there's a mask on this layer, I have mask property that I can adjust. And they also have an effect on this layer, which is actually filling it with blue. And I have all of the properties for that effect available down here as well. Now anytime you're looking at effect properties, you can also access them up here in the effects controls panel, which is a viewer. Like we talked about in a previous tutorial, you can view all of your effects and all of their controls over here. The only thing you can't view are expressions, which have to be viewed down here. And we will briefly touch on expressions in an upcoming tutorial. Let's check out what's going on for this composition layer here. This is actually a pre-comp. If you double click on it, it will open up. And you'll see on this layer, it's a text layer. And on this text layer, we have transform properties. We have effects properties. And we have text properties here. But if we look at what's happening on this composition layer here, which contains that text and those effects, we only have effects. Because there's another effect on here. It's actually two effects. A bevel alpha. And a drop shadow. And we have transform properties available as well. These last two, the shape layer here and the text layer, these will have properties available in them that are specific to shape layers and text layers. So in the shape layer here, I have properties for this rectangle too, which is this right here. I can control things in the rectangle path, the stroke, and the fill, and also the transform, which only affects this rectangle. Right here, you will see if I twirl down rectangle 1, I have all of the same thing. And I also have a transform for rectangle 1, which only affects this rectangle here. And then I have another transform. This affects everything on this layer. It'll be a little bit confusing until you jump in and kind of move things around on your own. And you see exactly how it works. And then it'll all make complete sense. Finally, if we look at the text layer here, we get again some options that you will only have for text. So we have a source text here, which you can apply expressions to. You have a fly out here, which you can animate all kinds of crazy things that are only specific to text layers. These are per character animation things that you can explore. And I'll talk about that briefly in an upcoming tutorial. And then there's something that we haven't seen on a layer before. And this is layer styles. Now, this is not specific to a text layer, but I did just want to touch on it really quickly. Layer styles are very similar, in fact. They are nearly identical to what you'll find in Photoshop. If you've ever used layer styles in Photoshop, things like drop shadow, or outer glow, or inner glow, all of this layer styles are available on every single layer in After Effects. And I just want to throw one on here so that you could see what's happening. If I turn on the transparency grid here with that layer soloed, you can see that this is a text layer and it has a basic drop shadow. And I have all of the properties associated with that drop shadow available right here in the layer properties. And they're available nowhere else. They don't show up in the effects controls because it's not an effect. It's a layer style. And you have to adjust that down here. In the properties. So I hope all that made sense. If it didn't, I'm sure it will fall into place as you move on through this course. And you check out the next several tutorials. Coming up in the next tutorial, you're going to learn about keyframe basics. So check that out. Finally, we are done for today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave your comment down below in the comments section. Also, if you want to learn more, take a look at our first channel, Everything PS. See you next time. Bye.